Do you struggle with putting yourself out there? Do you always second guess a move you're about to make? And are you stuck in this trap of perfection? Always planning, but never launching, never making that move. If that sounds like you, you're going to want to listen to today's show. I'm joined by my good friend, Justin Stewart, and we are going to talk about how to escape the perfection trap because excellence crushes perfection. So in today's show, you will be equipped with tools and tactics of how to recognize perfection, how to crush it, and how to move forward into your purpose and your assignment in your identity. Let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Raising the Standard. As you heard from the intro, I'm joined by Justin Stewart, and Justin and I have been having these great conversations. You know, he's been a part of my journey. He is the artist behind everything for standard59.com, also for The Standard. Some of those videos that promote the book, The Standard, Justin was the mastermind behind that. Really talented guy. And he also was on a past episode with us where we talked about how all men are called to create. One of the sidebars that Justin and I end up talking about, and not just talking about, he actually has observed it in me, is how men get stuck, how we as guys have a plan, we have a vision, and then when it comes time to press the go button, it's sometimes hard to release and just launch because things are never good enough for us. And if that sounds like you, you're going to want to tune in to today's show. And guys, I can openly admit that I personally have struggled with perfectionism in the past. I'm going to get vulnerable today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story, but let me bring on Justin Stewart. Justin's here in the studio with us. Justin, what's up, man? How are you doing today?
What's up, man? Great to be back.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you. So, Justin, you and I have been having this great conversation about how we both probably have been stuck with some perfectionism and iterations of programs and plans that just have kind of hung us up a little bit. So I wanted to share that conversation and this dialogue with our listeners today. But I remembered something from the last time you were on. Guys, I'm going to link the episode below. It was called All Men Are Called to Be Creators. And we got into your story, Justin. And you're doing something really exciting right now that we mentioned, but we never got a chance to dive into it. And that's your current project and using your artwork and your skills of illustration for an NFT project. So could you just catch us up on what you're working on right now?
Yeah, so really NFTs have like kind of, I'm sure everyone's heard of them now and everyone has an opinion, but really NFTs is just a facet of it. What we're building is a triple A video game, really. And a lot of other video games are coming out right now, but we're building something with where it's going to be a standalone, amazing mobile video game, but it also has the added benefit of utilizing and trading and buying and selling your assets in the video game through NFTs and blockchain technology. So really awesome. Really privileged to be in this space. It's a new space. It's very it's volatile right now, but it's exciting and it's something that is here to stay. So I'm excited for me personally to see art and particularly digital art, but just art becoming the forefront of a technology and also just like a new industry.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. I mean, everyone knows I'm a fan of your illustration skills, your artwork, your eye for design. I mean, just for the stuff you've done for me, but I've been watching your project. I'm actually, I will disclose, I'm an owner of one of the NFTs that you created. I love it. Love the artwork. What's the name of the company, Justin? Can you share that with us?
Yeah, sure. So our company is Coin Games with a K, coingames.io. And the first video game that we're going to be building, we're still a far way out. We're still in the recruiting process. We're building I don't want to say a massive team, but a really top tier team of developers that I can't even disclose right now to build this game. And that will be released. It's called Bloodline in about a year and a half to 2 years. So goal is to under promise there. So, but you can follow us there at CoinGames.io on Instagram and all social media. And then every Thursday night we do a live Twitch event where we just do giveaways and we catch everyone up with what we're doing. So feel free to jump in there if you're interested.
Awesome, man. We'll drop those links below for anyone that wants to check out the artwork, check out Bloodline, and check out coingames.io. Justin, let's jump into today's topic because, we're talking about making moves. As kingdom men, we want to submit our plans to the Lord. But once we get the go button, once the Lord says, okay, it's time to step out, or once it's time where you feel that nudge where I got to take the first step of faith and I got to walk towards my purpose, I got to start walking this out. That it's easy for us to get stuck. So let me just ask you, as it pertains to coin games, and we'll go a little bit further back, maybe into some of your projects. I want to make this really, practical for the guys that are listening, because we all deal with different things at different phases, seasons, and times of our life, and we want to discuss like how we overcame it and how people can overcome similar situations. So when it comes to the NFT project and coin games, how are you with making that move? Do you get stuck sometimes? I'm watching what you guys are doing and you got these massive projects and undertakings. Like, do you ever second guess yourself as you're creating stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that I think God brought me on this journey just for one of the for just the sole purpose. I don't want to say the sole purpose because he's always doing a lot of things, but to get rid of that perfectionist mentality, because now I'm leading a team, whereas in the past I was leading myself, and there's no way to lead when perfection is the goal. So we've come up with like some internal dialogue, which is to fail forward, and we're actually embracing mistakes. We're embracing, as artists, we tend to get caught up in like, there's like a sketch hand where you're like in this free spirited momentum of just developing and drawing from your elbow and your shoulder. And then there's like this tight, rigid type of place you get to where you're just starting and you're so afraid of making a mistake. And it's like, this is not where the magic happens. The magic happens in this like free creative spirit and the free flowing type of place. So that's the environment and the atmosphere I'm trying to cultivate, and it took a while for me to get there myself. So I'm trying to also help cultivate that with some of the other artists and even other departments in the company.
Wow, man, you never explained that to me before, but like what a great analogy. When you're open, when you're loose, when you can be like authentic and vulnerable, even with your movements in illustrations, that just opens up ideas and allows you to kind of put yourself out there with, hey, there's no fear of failure. If it doesn't work, we'll scrap it. And I love that, that it's not just an analogy, it's real life, but when you're trying to be perfect, you're tighter, right? You're stricter and you can't kind of keep it constricted, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a challenge I've had too, because I'm a graphic designer hybrid. So in graphics, oftentimes you're living in that place where you're doing type fonts. And obviously I did your book. So it's like going from that place of drawing like the hand with the chisel, then putting it in the book and then having to make sure that every line is correct and that there's no typos is two different types of the brain. So there's a discipline to get from one place to the other, and it's a different mentality. Sometimes it's a different day. One day is set aside for creative, out of the box, avant garde type of thinking, and another day is like, hey, dialed in, regimented. Let's follow a schedule and let's produce something that is a little bit more fine tuned and result. So yeah, it's a discipline to stay loose, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's good. It's interesting because I do a lot of public speaking. I'm training. I do different events. I do sales presentations, all sorts of things like that throughout my career and my life. And it's kind of similar when someone is speaking or when someone's putting themselves out there, like literally putting themselves out there, whether it's a stage, a virtual stage, whatever the environment is. You can tell if someone's like nervous or striving, or they just can't be authentic, and it shows up in their body language. You get stiff, you might hold your arms, you don't move around a little bit, but as you get comfortable with yourself, you become more expressive. You learn how to work the stage a little bit. You learn how to use inflection and just be yourself and let it loose. And oh well, I might stumble, I might say it weird, it might not come out right, but I'm okay with it.
Yeah, yeah, and you and I have talked about this a lot. I mean, with everything from you coming and doing your podcast, and like just how I could tell how much more comfortable you are, and the way you speak is just more fluid. And then just even, I mean, this has been years now of us talking to each other and critiquing each other as brothers, and understanding each other, and even just coming onto the podcast, I could see, you're way more comfortable. I could hear your intro, and I'm like, oh, that's so cool. He's fallen into this groove. And for me, I have a YouTube channel, and I'll try to speak sometimes with other people, and I'm still working through that part of like, okay, now come out and be vulnerable, but also, have my thoughts put together, but in a way that's natural and free. And but yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
love this conversation. It's really great.
Yeah. This is a good lead in for a couple areas that I think we need to go into. Um, when it comes to, well, so first of all, you're referencing practicing. I had to learn how to speak in a studio in front of a camera into a microphone that's in front of me without anyone in there, and just talking and just kind of no one's around. And I'm like, some days you're like, what are you doing? Like, what, like, how's this coming across? So there is a role for preparation. There's a role for practice in getting ready to launch or put yourself out there or whatever that move is that you feel called to make. So that's an element we can talk about. But I just want to openly admit right now, because the topic for today is perfection. Like, how do we crush perfection? Why do we need to crush it? Right? Like, what's wrong with trying to be perfect? And for me, what I've realized is, it's probably has to do, if we go really deep, like in my upbringing, the way that the way I was raised, the way that I always felt I had to be, or the performance nature that's within myself. I know that's also within a lot of guys. Like, we feel we need to perform, and we do. Like, we're always called on to perform. Like, hey, at work, be a high performer. At sports, go out there and crush it. And we need to learn how to turn it off and turn it on. And if we get stuck in that, we can feel that if we're not performing at a certain level, that we're failing. And a lot of that is rooted, the root for me personally, just to share this, the root of perfection. If I notice that I'm trying too hard to be perfect, it's rooted in fear. And that fear can show up a couple different ways for everybody. For me personally, I'll just openly admit it's fear of man, fear of what others think. What are they going to say? What if they find out? And I still battle with that. I think you even mentioned, like, to put the book out there was extremely vulnerable. And then to make a decision later that I think I want to have this show and I want to put it out there, that was a whole nother level of courage for me. Now I'm past that, but it goes like a ladder. Like, what's the next thing where I'm going to challenge myself, and I'm really going to have to put myself out there, and I'm going to have to overcome perfection, which is really fear in my life. What's your take on that in terms of what I'm sharing with perfection and this correlation with fear?
Yeah, I mean, I went through, obviously season of fear and anxiety, but delineating between like what you typically see as fear and then what you just mentioned is the conclusion I've come to in my life as well. Like, when you boil it down and you get down to the root of it, and you get down to like, what would be the, I don't know, the source code or the core code of what's going on, because the perfectionist mentality is really just a symptom of the root problem. And for me, it's very similar to you. Everyone's going to have like a little nuanced difference as to what's causing that that feeling that they need to be perfect in this aspect or another aspect of their life. And it's pride and fear. And really, like, in everyday conversation, the two words can almost be interchangeable, like excellence and perfect, but they're actually very different. And you can get caught up in seeking and pursuing excellence, and accidentally trying to go for perfection as well, and I think that that's a lie that you can get caught up in, and actually dismantle your whole agenda.
Yeah. Justin, you said something. I got to rewind for a second. You said that it's linked to pride. I think you're right. I think you're right. Like, what if you have a fear of man? Where's that coming from? There's probably, or if you have a fear connected, like, okay, let's go another level deeper with it. Where's that coming from? Why do I feel I need to have this perception? Why do I need to have this persona? Who cares what they think? And that can be traced back to, well, I really want to present myself a certain way. I'm a man of this reputation. Or what if someone sees this? Or what if I make a mistake or show a weakness? What's that going to be perceived as? So, bro, that was a great insight.
Yeah, yeah. For me, I mean, even just admitting it was coming from pride for me, and there was a lot of issues in my, how you do one thing is how you do everything. So there's things in my marriage, how I was parenting, and I'm not saying that that's all gone, but it's something that at least now that I'm aware of, that I'm checking and I'm realizing like why does this feel this need to be perfect even in the way I communicate with this person. It's wrong. It's coming from pride, and it's actually sucking the life out of what could be excellent and what could be fresh and airy and fun and leave room for innovation and exploration is now tight and rigid. And just like that analogy I made in the beginning, it's that fear of man, that I'm afraid of being vulnerable, and it's really the root of a lot of issues, you know.
Yeah. Well, let's transition here because you also shared and we started to go into what's the remedy for this? Like, how do you overcome perfection? And you and I have talked about this many times. And listen, I'm an excellence guy. I'm a guy who wants things to look a certain way. You know because you've worked with me. You know, I wanted the standard to look a certain way. I wanted my website to look a certain way. So there's something about we're called to work in excellence. So I wanted to drop this scripture here because there is a difference between excellence and perfection. They're not equal. And perfection can actually masquerade as excellence. So you can be saying, I'm trying to do everything in excellence, but you're really trying to be perfect. So we have to be honest with each other, right? We have to be honest with yourself. You got to look in the mirror and say, what's really driving this? Now, however, that doesn't mean excellence is wrong or bad. Quite the contrary, because I have a couple verses I wanted to share because I do think that we should do everything with excellence. I think we should strive to operate in excellence in all that we do. And that should make us look different to the world. That should make us stand out on the job. And we're going to talk about just a few examples there. But I have this scripture in Second Corinthians, it's 8:7, and it says this: but just as you excel in everything and lead the way in faith, in speech, in knowledge, in genuine concern, genuine interest, and in the love you have for us, see that you excel in this gracious work of giving also. So that is the Apostle Paul, and he's talking about be excellent. Do this. Make sure you're doing it this way. Like this is something that makes us different. So I want to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, one of the questions you asked earlier was like, how do you address it? And you're right. That was a verse I came across too, when I was thinking and praying about this topic. And one of the things I realized that was happening in my life, and hopefully this answers what your question is, and is that the fruit of what I was doing was producing very clear. The negative fruit was very clear in what I was striving for. So no matter what I love what you said when you said it masquerades. And that's kind of think what I was trying to say earlier is it's like the two can be interchangeable if you're not careful. You can say that you're striving for excellence, and I think as Christians, and I think even in some circles of Christianity, there's that desire to be excellent, and Jesus did everything with excellence. I mean, you and I love excellence. I've gotten jobs because I did things with excellence, and that can be you can masquerade.
You can co-opt it, right? You can co-opt the word excellence and the concept to make it a shiny veneer for your inadequacies, right? So we also got to be careful not to have a gut reaction where we say, "Oh, excellence is bad. Stop trying to be in excellence." Like, no, we should stay in excellence. We should live in excellence. Let's just be real. Like, let's just be authentic about it. Are you trying so hard where it's really something else? So like we need to do a scan. Like, so guys that are listening, like do a scan on yourself and just say like, hey, where's this really coming from? Like, what is this emotion? Why do I feel this need? Like, is there comparison? Is there pride? Like, what's driving me forward in the current activity? Or maybe it's something, a project on the job. So I think we just need to be aware of that.
Yeah, I think you're right. The scan, or like the self audit of, and one of the things when I'm leading my team here, and some of the artists that I'm working with, we can get caught up in that rhythm, especially someone who's fresh out of school where everything's being graded, and there is this desire to like achieve a certain grade, but there's this place where you can realize what you're actually pursuing when the passion leaves and the innovation goes away, and now it's about achieving a certain outcome as opposed to the journey of the outcome. And that's where the magic happens. That's where the beauty is. And if you notice that the passion's been sucked out of the quote unquote project or the step in the project, then you can probably audit and find that, okay, we're striving for perfection. We're stuck here and we need, sometimes it's just getting other eyes on something or having someone else come in and auditing as well and saying, look, you know, I think we're, you know, we need to shift gears here. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah, there's also this other verse in Proverbs. I wanted to share this too. I just had to pull it up over here. So Proverbs 22:29 says, "Do you see a man skillful and experienced in his work? He will stand in honor before kings. He won't stand before obscure men." A lot of people use that verse, but that's someone who's skilled, right? That's someone who we talked about preparation, we talked about practice. This really comes to showing up, being present, putting in work even when no one's around to be the best at your craft, to be the best at that skill, to develop something, and that all requires doing it in excellence.
Yeah. There's something to be said, obviously, and something to be admired when someone is crafting something with excellence, because you could tell that there was a lot of, but it's easy to look at someone who's crafting something and not see the hours of mistakes. Someone who's chiseling something, that how many times they hit their hand or did something the wrong way, and it's easy to do that and not accept the process. And I think Michael J. Fox had a quote, and it always stuck out to me. It was something like, and of all people, Michael J. Fox, but he said, "I strive for excellence, but perfection, that's God's work." And I always love that. Like, you obviously, we're never going to live up to what Christ did. He was that model of perfection. And if you look at every issue throughout history, throughout the Bible, it always is coming back to that place of trying to be something that we can't achieve. And it's not until you've you asked a couple minutes ago, like, what's the core issue? What when we boil it down, we do that audit, it's really an identity issue, and it's really something that I was able to change in myself when I had sons, and I realized how much, no matter what they've done, no matter what issue they're having or when they're creating something, um, there's nothing they can do that would make me love them less or be less proud of them in what they're building and what they're creating. Maybe I could say that better, but
No, I hear what you're
maybe you
saying.
can
Like, so
respond.
from a sonship's perspective, we don't use excellence to win our Father's love. I think that's important, and that's what you're pointing out, right? So, like, I can't love my kids anymore. I love them. I want to provide for them. I want to protect them. I do want to instill work ethic. I do want to teach them the way they should go. I want to help them make good decisions. And that's me training them. That's me preparing them for the work that they're called to do. But the love is not connected to that. The
No,
acceptance is not connected to that whatsoever. So
yeah, the
um,
key
that,
is
that's
acceptance. Yeah,
yeah, that's an important point, right? We don't work for our Father's acceptance. We don't work to earn his love. So if anyone's struggling with that legalistic background that says you're never good enough, we're not talking about that. But I also look at it this way, Justin. It's important to say it because people need to hear it. I know people are at all different stages and phases of their Christian journey. However, we also need to get past that. We need to get to the point where we are secure in our identity, where we know who we are. Because if I'm always guessing and I'm always second guessing, does God love me? Am I working for this? Like, we need to eventually grow up. The writer of Hebrews will actually say, he addresses this concern and he's telling the Hebrews, let's move on past elementary things. Let's move on past just the basics of the Christian walk and some of the foundational issues of our identity. And let's get into meatier issues. Let's go into deeper things that we need to progress in our Christian life. So I just want to settle it. Like, you do not work for love from your father God. You don't have to earn it. You don't practice. You don't have to do anything to get his acceptance. He gives it to us. It's unmerited. And just think about an earthly father. And this is the way I am with my kids, regardless of the way you grew up. You are going to love your kids no matter what they do. They can't earn it, or for you, Justin, they can't draw a better picture or do better in art class or whatever that sport is they're in for them to get a better reception from you in terms of your love for them.
Yeah, and it wasn't always like for me. The revelation came wasn't always for love, because I think a lot of us who are called to kingdom, whether it be entrepreneurship or just serving in the kingdom, there's this desire to like want to present the best thing to your father because you're doing it for the kingdom, and like we're going out and like even we're going out and we're presenting like the gospel. So am I correct in my references? And there's this like there's like, oh, I don't want to misrepresent the father, and I've fallen into that a lot of times too, where like, oh, I can't let that person know I'm struggling, because kingdom people aren't supposed to be struggling with that mentality. And that's where I realized, wait. It's still, there's the verse in Colossians, I forget. It's, do everything as unto your father and not unto men. And that's exactly it. It's like, okay, it doesn't matter. I'm his son no matter what. And it wasn't until I started operating from that as my baseline that I was able to shed and slough away all these other things that I knew were pretty much a cancer to my production and causing me to produce the fruit that I knew. He doesn't ask for my perfection. Actually, that's already taken care of. He's after my heart. So
Justin, I love the conversation, man. I mean, this is so good to kind of get into the details of where's it come from, perfection versus excellence. Like, how do I self audit? How do I figure out what's happening here? How do I reconcile this with being accepted by God? And how do I still push to do things with the spirit of excellence? And we say that term, "a spirit of excellence," is actually in the Bible. We see the concept and we see it in the life of Daniel. And we see that Daniel works. He actually works with a spirit of excellence in the world's environment. And it's a hostile culture, but because he has a spirit of excellence, it causes him to stand out and to rise above within all his peers within Egypt. And that causes a path for promotion. So it actually says in Daniel 5:12, I'll just read the verse here, but it says, because he had an extraordinary spirit and an excellent spirit, knowledge and insight, interpretation of dreams, explanation of enigmas, solving difficult problems. This is what we find in Daniel. This is actually, he works with this spirit of excellence. It comes from Daniel chapter 5. So I want to get your take on that because that can be the pathway to promotion. At least that's what we see in the life of Daniel. And I believe we also see it in the life of Joseph. So, guys, I mean, this is what I found in my life. Justin, I'll share it with you. I know that because I've showed up on certain, work sites and in jobs and in different roles that I've had, when I was able to apply myself with diligence, right? There's a concept in the Bible about being a diligent workman. He's a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. And tied into that is a spirit of excellence, like showing up and doing what others won't do, staying longer, maybe punching the clock earlier, maybe making that extra sales call when other people hang it up after, at a much lesser rate. And those things are what enabled my pathway to promotion. So I see a parallel with a spirit of excellence. You can call it an attitude of excellence if you want, but there's this spirit of excellence that we can bring into the world's culture, which causes a pathway for promotion for us. We see that in the life of Daniel, and we see that in the life of Joseph. And I've seen it in my life as well. I just wanted to get your thoughts around that concept.
yeah, absolutely. The promotion aspect of it is awesome, and it can be tricky too. But there's no denying that as kingdom, like as kingdom men, and looking at Daniel and Joseph, like excellence is required of us. We should be operating at a level that is beyond what other people would call satisfactory. I was going to say, let's like even just look at the definition of excellence, and then I could start from there. And the one I came up with that I liked the most was just from dictionary.com. It says the fact of or state of excelling, superiority, and eminence. So it's like what everyone else calls is a satisfactory job. We go beyond that, and it's not because, and that's where I think you have to make that distinction in your heart is like, why are you going beyond to show everyone else like. And that's where I was falling a victim too. It was no, because I'm doing this unto my Father, and I want to show to him that wherever he puts me, I'm going to be faithful with what he puts my hands to be, or what he's called me to put my hands to do. And it's when you make that distinction and you're doing it as unto your father, that's when the promotion happens. That's when the promotion happened for Daniel. Daniel went on that fast, not because he wanted to show everybody, look, I can be strong just eating vegetables. He said, no, I can't defile my body like that because my body's a temple for my father, and he decided and made that decision because of his father. When Joseph ran from Potiphar's wife, he said, I can't defile myself in that way. He wasn't doing it because he was trying to, and I think there's a distinction to be made there where we're doing it as unto our father, not as unto man in
Yeah.
that moment, and in those decisions that we make.
That's really good. That's really good. So there's a principle behind what you're saying. I'm going to call it consecration. Both these guys were consecrated to the Lord, which really means they set themselves apart. They entered a hostile territory, a different culture, a counterculture to what their relationship with God was, their national history, their religion, their identity, and they never leave it. And it's all driven from this place. I love how you said it. It's just they were devoted to their father. They were devoted to God, and they didn't let anything get in the way of that. So like we got to be really clear here. It wasn't like I got to keep these rules or I lose the love of my father. It wasn't that if I do this, I'll no longer be accepted. It was because I love him, because I'm devoted, because I've consecrated and set myself apart. That's why I will conduct myself with this spirit of excellence. And I looked it up while you were chatting there for a minute, and I saw that it's surpassing. It's preeminence and surpassing the average, the ordinary from the Hebrew term. So I think the other concept we need to go into is that we're telling ourselves, right? This is for you and me. We're telling ourselves that we need to have a spirit of excellence. We're telling the guys listening that you need to carry yourself in excellence in your attitude and be surpassing and stand out where you can as a representative, as an ambassador of the kingdom and Jesus. But also that doesn't mean doing it when everything's right or doing it just to get a pathway to promotion, because in the life of Joseph,
Right.
he was in prison. He was in prison.
Yeah.
And he's serving with excellence. So I think a huge key component that we just have to go into for a moment is we're required to have this spirit of excellence and to serve as unto the Lord, like you referenced earlier, even when we're in prison, even when we're in an extreme. And what's important to point out with Joseph's story, it was unjust and it was unfair. He didn't belong in that prison. It was because of a false accusation. So, guys, I mean, this is powerful. How do you deal with your attitude when you've been treated unjustly, when it's been unfair, and you find yourself in a situation you don't like, and you're like, I shouldn't be here? And I think our natural reaction is to kick back against that.
Yeah, I mean, for me in my life, my personal experience, Josh, and my testimony, is I was in that place where I was fighting, your gift will bring you before kings and set you before, kings, and your gift will make room for you. And then when I was striving and doing these long sessions of trying to achieve excellence, but it was really perfection and it was really as unto man. When I didn't get the promotion I was looking for, it was when I had a mental breakdown, and my history, my story. It was a legit mental breakdown, panic, anxiety, and it actually turned into complete. I brought myself to a place where I couldn't produce anything. And then I had to refocus, recenter, and I was forced to do a self audit and determine it changed everything for me. So in that moment, I was humbled in a way, and hopefully I can teach my sons and teach and help other people so that they can get to that place where they're realizing, listen, you need to do this as unto your father because your life depends on it. Your success depends on it. And you're doing it as unto him because that's where the true reward comes from. That's where promotion, the Bible says promotion comes from the Lord. So it doesn't come from, and that's the problem. When you're doing it as unto man, you're trying to get promoted by that person. But Joseph he was doing things in the prison when no one was watching.
Right.
He was doing things when he was doing things to promote himself in the spirit realm where no one was watching, and he was gaining favor. And he had a lot of pride that he needed to get he needed to get worked out of him. We know
Yeah.
that if we read between the lines with his brothers.
Yeah.
So and with Daniel, similar situation, but um, lion's den is not promotion. Fiery furnace, but it is in the spiritual realm.
Right.
They were being promoted in that moment, and they were promoting also. We need to think about who else in our lives are being promoted through our actions or our inaction. And all of Israel was promoted. God was promoted in that moment. We know Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They were Daniel's friends. Like all the people gained favor through their promotion. And imagine if they would have bowed, God would have forgiven them.
Yeah.
But so I think there's a lot in that we often overlook because we can have this linear thinking of excellence equals promotion.
Right. So good. Yeah. Because you know what we do, Justin? Man wants to make a formula of everything. We want to take it and say, okay, let's label it. Let's make it a 3-point sermon. Let's put the steps in place. Here's the framework. And this is how it always works. And it doesn't work like that because it's a relationship. And what you just said there was so key, because promotion comes from the Lord. That's in scripture. And it's the Lord is watching our attitude. He's watching our heart. I'm just thinking of David too. Before he's chosen and anointed as king, the Lord sees him. He's watching him worship on the hillside when no one's around. And he's looking at his heart and he's like, look, I found a man after my own heart. And it's like, how are we showing up? Like, so the lesson for me is like, how are we showing up? And guys, I'm asking myself as well. How are you showing up when no one's looking? How's your attitude when you didn't get the job you went for and you have to go back and there's a little bit of humiliation there and the Lord's rooting some pride out of your life? How's it look for entrepreneurs when you launch a product and it doesn't really do what you thought it was going to do or what you wanted? And you feel like, wow, I'm humiliated, or, that's a real shot to the way I wanted to be perceived. And it's all tied back to this perfection or this thing here that we've been wrestling with throughout this conversation. So this is the Lord's process for us. I just want to point it out. We talked about how serving with excellence is the process and can be the pathway to promotion. But serving with excellence doesn't always equal promotion. It doesn't always equal it in your timing or the way you think promotion is going to look. So what are you doing when no one's looking? That's really a key thing here. And we're talking about God's dealings with man. How does he deal with us? And one of the primary ways that he deals with us, and this is what Jesus is meaning when he says, pick up your cross and follow me. If you want to follow me, if you want to be my disciple, pick up your cross. It means there's a cross for us. There is going to be some things that he's going to use that instrument of the cross, this concept of a cross in our life, to root out pride, to break us, all for the purpose that he can flow through us in a greater dimension, a greater measure.
Yes. Yeah, it is really exactly that, Josh. I think, in my life, and I can't really speak to everyone else's life, but in my life, I've had to learn it the hard way, and in a lot of areas, which I would argue is not the most effective way. Obedience is the most effective way to learn, but learning through what I've been through and allowing my drive to be promoted and my drive and my desire to take territory and to, all these terms and these things that they had nothing to do with what my father was asking me to do. And I wasn't picking up my cross. I was actually laying it down to run and to do whatever I wanted and to get promotion for myself and my ministry and my calling and my anointing. And really, I saw one of your last videos was about picking up your cross, and I'm going to go back and watch that. But I would imagine it has a lot to do with, serving God and the desires that he has for you in your life, as opposed to just seeking after what would be like the mammon and the favor of this world. And when you truly do a deep audit there, when you truly look and be transparent with yourself and find out and even write it down, all the places where you're falling flat. And I realize in my place, because if you're striving for perfection, most likely all those places you're striving for perfection are at a standstill. So there was a bunch of projects I was looking to achieve. They were at a standstill. When you were trying to create perfection for the book and for the podcast and for the brand, what it was at a standstill, you know? And and then when you realize like, okay, I'm doing this unto you, Lord, and we're gonna fail forward, you know, and I say that with everything it sounds like. We're gonna fail, and that's why I created my design agency prior to being full time with Coin Games, which was Onward. We don't look back, and like Paul said, we focus all our energies on moving ahead. And you can't do that when you're focusing on perfection, when you're focusing on promoting. You're essentially trying to promote yourself, and when you know that God is the one who has. He's the one that says he stands in the heavens and he scoffs at the plans of man. And when we're serving him, promotions are going to come. It doesn't always look like what we think, you know?
Yeah, it may not look like what you think, and it may not come in the timing that you think. Justin, I'm loving this conversation. I'm going to wrap up right now and just put a bow on this for everyone that's listening. So much good wisdom here, so many things to think about. Guys, we went a little bit deeper on this, perfection rooted in fear, trace that, audit yourself, scan yourself as to where that's coming from in your life. Embrace excellence, embrace the spirit of excellence. You're not doing it to earn the Father's love, but you're doing it to represent the Father because you love him. And if we take that attitude and we do it when no one's looking, that is our character. That's our conduct. That's what really pleases the Lord. That's how we really represent him to a world that does not know him. We should look different. We should sound different. And, this doesn't matter what level you find yourself in life right now. If you're digging ditches, like be the best at that. If you're served to bring water to someone, be the best at that. If you're an architect, be the best at that. And I think if we embrace that spirit of excellence and we learn how to cooperate and to partner with the will of God for our life, promotion comes from the Lord. Guys, I want to thank you for listening to today's episode. Please share this with someone. If you know someone that needs to hear this message, if you recognize these concepts in your life or in a friend's life and you want to talk about it, you want to go deeper with it, I'm encouraging you, share the episode, start a conversation. Let's go deeper in our walk with each other. Let's go deeper with our walk with the Lord. Let's get after it.